Hi fellow artists, my name is Lauren. I'm the artist behind Potato Art Studios, and in today's video I'll be going over how I correct for perspective distortion on my drawings when I take photos. So if you're interested in seeing on how I transform and manipulate my photos to make sure that the drawing is accurately represented in my photo, just keep on watching. So if you're not familiar with what perspective distortion is, it's basically if you are not taking your photo exactly parallel with your drawing or painting, there is going to be some distortion on your image that your camera takes or your phone takes. So to show that example, I'm going to have this picture of a flower on the screen. And so with this flower, I just took it from Google. It's just a flower and it's symmetrical, so you can clearly see when I have distortion applied to it. So this is an example of what can happen to your photo if you take a picture from a different angle. So if I were to take a picture of the flower from the left side, you can see that the flower is distorted slightly. And if it's on the right side's distorted slightly. Same thing for the top and bottom. And so this is just an example with the flower. You can easily imagine if this was done with your drawing that you made of a person, especially for a person's facial features. If you're not taking your picture with the drawing exactly parallel to the camera, you're going to have some level of distortion. And so if you want to make sure that your image that you're uploading to your website, the internet, social media is as accurate as possible, you definitely want to be able to correct for those perspective warping events that happen. I'm going to show you how I basically take my pictures, and it's a very primitive demo, but here you go. So when I take a picture, I always take pictures outside. That's the best way to get the most accurate colors on my drawings. I have a chair out, the sun's shining. It's usually early afternoon. I will stand outside and I will have my drawing mounted onto a board that I place on a chair. I am taking a picture. My drawing is mounted onto the board, so the drawing in this example will be this blue line, and my camera ideally will be parallel to the drawing. So if I were to draw two lines, the line here should be parallel to my drawing here. So when you have your camera exactly parallel to your drawing and centered, of course, your picture should be perfectly taken. There should not be any perspective warping involved. And most cases that doesn't happen. There's always going to be a slight misalignment because unless you have a tripod set up and it's leveled and your drawing is perfectly mounted, most people aren't going to do all that effort. So there is going to be some level of perspective distortion on your image. So to show you what my picture looks like, I did a picture outside, have the drawing on the chair, and I took a picture of this drawing I did of my bird Craig. As a side note, if you're interested in learning how to draw a bird, I did film this entire drawing process and I'll have a link to it in the cards. So getting back to the actual topic of this video, what I did deliberately was I took a picture looking down at it at an angle. What I did was this. I deliberately did this where I was above the drawing at an angle, and so the top edge is wider than the bottom edge. So if you take a look here, it's not very apparent, but the top edge is slightly wider than the bottom edge. So in this demo, we're going to fix that warp. So the first thing I like to do when I'm editing a photo is importing it into my photo editing program. In this demo, I'm using Affinity. If you're using a different program, there will probably be tools very similar to Affinity. You might just have to look them up specifically to find out how they translate. But these tools are all pretty much universal. So the first thing I do is unlock the layer because I've imported a JPEG, so it's by default locked. So I just click that little padlock on the layer, and now I should be able to manipulate the image. To make my job a little bit easier, I'm just going to minimize the amount of area that I'm manipulating. So I'm just going to use the rectangular marquee tool and just select the drawing plus a little bit of the area around it. So I'll just copy, make a new layer, and paste. So you can see if I hide the original photo that I've only selected part of the drawing plus a little bit of the board. We are going to deselect it, and I like to use guidelines to show me how much I need to correct. So to use a guideline, I'll have the move tool selected, just a little pointer, and I will drag a guideline by clicking on the ruler, and a blue line will appear. So this blue line is just basically a guideline. It doesn't affect your actual photo, but it helps you while you're editing. So I'm going to make 4 guidelines, one for each side. So we're going to start with the top edge, which is pretty straight. Go to the bottom edge, slightly off, to the left edge, which is, now you can see that it's quite off now that I have a straight line running up and down the photo. And now we're going to do it for the right edge. So you can see there's a bit that needs to be adjusted, especially on the sides, which is true because we did this mistake of taking a picture from an above angle. In order to manipulate the photo, there is a transform feature. There is a mesh warp tool and a perspective tool. I've used both. I personally favor the mesh warp tool a little bit more. I think it provides a little bit more flexibility while you're applying the image transformation, but you can use either. So we have our drawing selected, and you'll see that there are 4 white boxes that appear on the edges. So these are handles that allow you to manipulate your photo. So I'm going to drag the top 2 corners inwards a little bit and drag the bottom 2 corners outwards a little bit, and that will help fix the perspective. So starting with upper left, just clicking and it'll turn black, and you pull it in. Same thing on the upper right, click and bring it in. Bottom right, click, bring it out. And with the handle, you can fine tune it a little bit more. Click and bring it up. And finally, the bottom, click, bring it out, and use the handle to fine tune any adjustments. So there's a little bit of other, just like you can see the edges is really close, but there's a little bit of fine tuning I can do. So I'll just use the handles. So in the upper left hand corner, I'll pull the handle out a little bit. The upper right corner, I'll also pull the handle out a little bit. So now I'll apply the transformation, and when I zoom in, you can see that the perspective has been corrected almost completely. So if we were to compare our corrected image to the original image, I can hide my current layer so you can see what a difference that made. So that's the original image, the corrected image. So the guidelines, the blue lines that we have are pretty nice because they can help you lock your image while you're cropping. So what I like to do is pull in the guidelines just a little bit. And so when I crop my image, it'll automatically lock onto the blue lines. So it gives you a lot of control. So we're going to crop. So I just drew the rectangle around the drawing area, apply the crop. But the thing is, when you have an image that's distorted, it can also affect the width and the length. So although we adjusted for the top and bottom edges, this bird is actually a little bit more stout or wide than he would be. And the reason why I know this is because if I were to apply a crop, an 8:10 ratio, which is what this drawing is, it's actually an 8:10 drawing. So if I were to apply that crop, you can see, let me hide the guides here. So you can see if it was an 8:10 drawing, basically it's a little bit too short. So let me zoom out. So if I use an 8:10 cropping ratio, you can see that there's a little bit of a chunk missing from the length of the drawing, which is okay. We can also fix this. So I'm going to apply the 8:10 crop, and you can see now I can see part of the board that the drawing is mounted on, but we're also going to fix this. So we're going to apply just a basic image transformation. So we have our layer selected, have the move tool selected, and all we're going to do is transform it vertically. So I'll pull it up, pull it down, and now the bird is basically where it should be. So we did two different types of transformations to correct for the perspective distortion. One was using the warp tool here. The second was just a simple scaling with the move tool here. And now our drawing has been adjusted. So this was just a quick tutorial on how to fix your images that may have been distorted by your camera or your phone taking it from a non-parallel angle. In most cases, your effect of distortion isn't going to be as severe. I deliberately took my photo at a poor angle just to show you how to correct for any distortions, but those two basic steps will apply to any image that needs correction. The next video I'll be doing is how to adjust for color balance. So if you're interested in seeing how I get my drawing to look on the computer like how it looks in real life to me, I'm going to make a follow-up video or a second part of this series, and I'll upload it next week. So if you're interested in seeing more videos from me, you can subscribe and turn on your notifications. If you'd like to see how I drew this bird, I'll have a link to the drawing time-lapse in the description box as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.